It was the 1st of March, 2020, in the heart of Colorado, and the snow had just begun melting on the streets of Denver. The city was waking up slowly, with a pale sun casting long shadows over the brick buildings. Inside a warm, brightly lit house on Elm Street, Melissa Parker adjusted her dress for the 3rd time, feeling the familiar weight of self-consciousness pressing on her chest. At 240 pounds, she had always been larger than most of her friends, and tonight's party was no exception. Melissa's husband, Daniel, was the host, and he had invited colleagues, neighbors, and old friends. But instead of support, the air was thick with judgment. As soon as she stepped into the living room, whispers traveled faster than her heartbeat. "Wow, Melissa, are you wearing that?" a voice sneered. It was Tiffany, Daniel's old co-worker, the kind of woman who thrived on other people's insecurities. Her tone carried a mix of amusement and cruelty that cut deeper than any knife. Melissa forced a smile. "Yes, it's new," she replied softly, trying to hide the way her hands trembled. The laughter around her grew. Daniel didn't stop it. In fact, he stood by, glass in hand, watching. "Relax, honey. They're just teasing," he said, though his eyes didn't meet hers. Melissa's heart sank. Money, prosperity, and values. These were things she had always believed a strong marriage was built on. Yet here she was, shamed in front of everyone she loved and trusted. She wanted to disappear, to shrink away from the stairs, but she couldn't. Every comment, every smirk, was a reminder that she had been invisible for too long, except when people mocked her size. By 9 o'clock, she had retreated to the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water to calm her racing mind. Her mother's words from years ago echoed in her head. Health and self-respect are more important than anyone else's opinion. Melissa realized she had been sacrificing herself for too long, bending to the expectations of a world that measured her worth in pounds rather than in heart. A decision began to form, small at first, like a spark in the dark. She would change, not for anyone else, but for herself. The humiliation she felt tonight would not define her. She wanted to wake up the next day stronger, more confident, healthier, and wealthier, not just in money, but in self-esteem and social respect. Melissa looked at Daniel, who was laughing with Tiffany in the living room. A cold clarity washed over her. One day, he would see what he had lost. One day, the person he had humiliated would rise far above him, and the balance of power would shift. For now, though, the party continued, oblivious to the storm building inside her. Melissa took a deep breath, feeling the first flicker of determination ignite in her chest. She didn't know the path yet, but she knew the journey would begin tomorrow morning. And as the clock struck 11 o'clock, Melissa made a promise to herself. No more waiting, no more hiding. She would reclaim her life, 1 pound, 1 step, 1 choice at a time. The morning sun streamed through the blinds on March 2nd, 2020, casting thin lines of light across Melissa Parker's bedroom in Denver. The snow from the previous day had melted into slush outside, and the cold air carried a faint scent of pine from the nearby mountains. Melissa sat on the edge of her bed, wrapped in a soft, oversized sweater, staring at her reflection in the mirror. 90 pounds heavier than she wanted to be, Melissa had spent years letting judgment and ridicule define her. But the memory of last night's party, the laughter, and Tiffany's cruel smirk lingered like an itch she couldn't scratch. Her heart ached, but beneath that pain, a seed of determination had taken root. She whispered to herself, "No more. I won't let them decide my value anymore." Melissa knew it wouldn't be easy. She had tried dieting before, had joined gyms, and had failed. But this time, it wasn't about anyone else. It was about her health, her prosperity, and her self-respect. She wanted her body to reflect the wealth of determination she had inside, the values she held close, and the love for herself that she had long ignored. By 10 o'clock, Melissa had made her first concrete step. She signed up for a nutritionist and a personal trainer in Denver, committing to a lifestyle change that would prioritize her health and well-being. The first consultation was scheduled for 10:30 in the morning at a small clinic tucked between a coffee shop and a boutique on Colfax Avenue. Driving there, Melissa felt a mix of fear and excitement. She thought about Daniel, still unaware of the storm building inside her. The man who had humiliated her had no idea that the person he treated with contempt would soon wield strength, confidence, and yes, even financial savvy to change the dynamics of their lives. At the clinic, she stepped onto the scale and recorded her weight: 240 pounds. Her jaw tightened, but her mind was clear. She visualized herself lighter, stronger, walking through Denver streets with poise and confidence. Each pound lost wouldn't just be a number. It would be a symbol of her values, her health, and her determination to reclaim her prosperity in every sense. Melissa left the clinic feeling an unfamiliar surge of power. For the first time in years, she felt like she held the reins of her own life. She knew that transformation would take months, maybe years, but she also knew it would be worth it. And deep down, she relished the thought that one day, those who laughed at her would be forced to reckon with the woman she was becoming. Someone whose wealth of spirit and self-respect would outshine any mockery. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa had already planned her meals, her workouts, and her mindset exercises for the next week. She even started a small journal, writing down her goals, the values she wanted to live by, and the prosperity she intended to create. Not just in money, but in relationships, health, and social respect. As she looked out over the streets of Denver, watching kids play in the muddy snow, Melissa smiled. This was her first real day of change, the day she decided that shame would no longer hold her captive. And in that moment, she made a silent promise. The person she was yesterday would never define the woman she was becoming. By the morning of March 3rd, 2020, Melissa Parker felt a mixture of hope and anxiety. The streets of Denver were still wet from the melting snow, and a faint chill hung in the air. She laced up her sneakers at 6:30 in the morning, her heart pounding in anticipation of the first workout with her personal trainer. 239 pounds, just 1 pound lost, but it felt monumental. Walking into the small gym on Larimer Street, Melissa was met with the encouraging smile of Jake, her trainer. "Morning, Melissa. Ready to get started?" he asked, his tone friendly but firm. "I guess so," she replied, trying to sound confident. Inside, however, fear gnawed at her. What if she failed again? What if the laughter and shame from her own party followed her here? The first hour was grueling. Melissa pushed herself through squats, lunges, and stretches she hadn't done in years. Every movement made her muscles ache. Every drop of sweat reminded her of her past complacency. Yet with every set, she felt a spark of pride. Her health was slowly becoming her own, her body a reflection of her values and her commitment to herself. By 8 o'clock, she was drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, but there was a smile on her face. "You did great today," Jake said. "It's not easy, but it's worth it." Melissa nodded, feeling the first taste of what she knew would be a long journey. She thought about Daniel and Tiffany, about the humiliation she had endured just 2 days ago. The anger she felt wasn't destructive. It was fuel. Every pound she would lose, every ounce of confidence she would gain, was a direct strike at the cruelty that had tried to define her. Later that afternoon, Melissa prepared a meal she had carefully measured and planned: grilled chicken, quinoa, and roasted vegetables. She tracked every calorie, every nutrient, knowing that her prosperity wasn't just financial, it was physical, mental, and social. The wealth she was building was in her health, her confidence, and her growing self-respect. By 7:30 in the evening, Melissa felt exhausted but empowered. She had faced the first real challenge of her transformation and survived. Sitting by the window, looking out over the Denver skyline as the city lights flickered on, she realized something profound. She had always believed she was powerless, but now she understood that true power came from determination, from self-love, and from holding on to one's values. That night, she wrote in her journal, "Today I fought for myself. Tomorrow I fight for the woman I am becoming. Money, prosperity, wealth, health, and values. They all start with believing I deserve them." And as she drifted to sleep at 11:45 in the evening, Melissa felt the first real sense of victory. Not over anyone else, but over the version of herself that had doubted she could ever rise. It was the 21st of March, 2020, and Denver's streets were lined with the first signs of spring. Melissa Parker woke at 6:15 in the morning, feeling lighter than she had in years. The scale read 210 pounds, a loss of 30 pounds since the start of her journey. The number alone was empowering, but the reflection in the mirror told an even stronger story. Her shoulders were straighter, her smile more confident, and her eyes held a spark that hadn't been there before. Melissa stretched, feeling muscles she hadn't known existed, each movement a reminder of her growing health and resilience. "I can do this," she whispered to herself, a mantra she repeated every morning. She had learned that transformation wasn't just about pounds lost, it was about reclaiming her values, her self-respect, and the prosperity that came from believing in herself. By 9 o'clock, she was at a small business seminar downtown, exploring ways to invest her money and build wealth. She knew that financial prosperity was tied to confidence, and she wanted to ensure she had both. Daniel had no idea how focused and driven she had become. He still mocked her occasionally, unaware that the woman he humiliated at her own party was becoming unstoppable. Lunch was a carefully prepared salad with lean protein, a recipe she had adapted for taste and health. Every bite reminded her of the wealth of options she now had. She could choose health, prosperity, and values over comfort and complacency. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa was meeting with her personal trainer, pushing her limits further than ever before. Jake watched in admiration as she powered through the exercises, her determination radiating. "What's changed?" Jake asked, genuinely curious. Melissa laughed softly, wiping sweat from her forehead. "Everything," she said. "I'm not just losing pounds, I'm gaining myself, my wealth of confidence, my values, my health. Money is important, sure, but right now, I feel richer than ever." By 7:30 in the evening, Melissa returned home, energized and proud. The Denver skyline glimmered in the sunset, reflecting the city's resilience and her own. She stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her dress for a dinner out with friends, and noticed for the first time that people were looking at her differently, not with judgment, but with admiration. That night, Melissa journaled her progress. 30 pounds down, health improving, wealth, values, and prosperity growing every day. "I am no longer the woman who let shame define her. I am Melissa Parker, and I am unstoppable." As she drifted to sleep at 11:55, a thought struck her. Daniel and Tiffany would soon notice the transformation. But this wasn't about revenge yet. It was about building a life so rich in confidence, health, and prosperity that the world couldn't ignore it. The real power, Melissa realized, lay not in humiliation, but in her rising, and that rising was only just beginning. It was the 4th of April, 2020, and Denver was basking in the gentle warmth of spring. Melissa Parker had lost 45 pounds since the beginning of her journey, bringing her weight down to 195 pounds. Her confidence had grown alongside her shrinking body, and with it, a new sense of prosperity and self-respect. Melissa walked into the downtown cafe at 10 o'clock in the morning, where she had arranged a meeting with a potential client for a small side business she was building. She carried herself with a poise that drew eyes, not in judgment, but in admiration. The world seemed different now, brighter, more welcoming. Her values had guided her through the months of sweat and dedication, and she was finally reaping the rewards in her personal and social life. "Melissa Parker, you look amazing," the client said, shaking her hand firmly. "Your energy is inspiring." Melissa smiled, feeling the wealth of self-confidence settle warmly in her chest. "Thank you. I believe prosperity isn't just about money. It's about health, values, and believing in yourself." By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa was at a local charity event. She had signed up to volunteer, wanting to give back to the Denver community that had shaped her. For the first time, she realized that her transformation wasn't just physical. It was emotional and social too. People noticed her kindness, her dedication, and her ability to inspire others. Daniel and Tiffany, of course, were still in her orbit, unaware that the woman they had mocked was becoming a force of influence. When she crossed paths with Tiffany in the event hall at 4:15 in the afternoon, Tiffany's smirk faltered. Melissa smiled politely, a glimmer of poetic justice shining in her eyes. "Good to see you, Tiffany," she said smoothly. "I hope you're having a lovely day." Tiffany's eyes widened slightly, the first crack in the armor of arrogance she had always worn. Daniel, standing beside her, looked equally startled. Melissa realized that her journey had already begun to shift the social balance. She was no longer the woman to be laughed at. She was someone whose wealth of confidence and self-respect commanded attention. By 7 o'clock in the evening, Melissa was home, reflecting on the day. She weighed herself and noted the new number, 195 pounds. The pounds were coming off steadily, but it was more than that. Her health was improving, her relationships were shifting, and her prosperity, in money, values, and influence, was growing. She wrote in her journal before going to bed at 11:45. "I am becoming more than I ever imagined. My health, my values, and my prosperity are guiding me. Those who humiliated me are beginning to see the woman I've always been. And this is only the beginning." As Melissa drifted off to sleep, she felt a quiet triumph. The humiliation of last March felt like a distant shadow, replaced by a rising force of confidence, social power, and determination. Denver was witnessing her transformation, and soon, the ones who had mocked her would understand the true wealth of resilience. It was the 15th of May, 2020, and Denver had fully embraced the warmth of late spring. The streets were alive with people enjoying the sunshine, the scent of blooming flowers mingling with the crisp mountain air. Melissa Parker woke at 6 o'clock in the morning, feeling the energy of someone far lighter and stronger. Her scale read 175 pounds, a loss of 65 pounds since the beginning of her journey. She was unrecognizable to those who had laughed at her. Yet she felt more herself than ever before. Melissa stretched by the window, looking out at the bustling city. Her health was thriving, her body toned, and her confidence radiated in every movement. Her wealth was no longer just a measure of money. It was the richness of self-respect, the prosperity of health and values, and the power of determination made real. By 9:30, Melissa was at a business brunch downtown, meeting with potential partners for a project she had been nurturing. She walked with poise, her presence commanding attention. Daniel, who had been seated at a nearby table with friends, looked up in disbelief. He did not recognize the woman before him. the woman who had once been humiliated at her own party. "Melissa?" he whispered to himself, barely believing his eyes. Melissa caught his glance and smiled subtly, a glint of satisfaction in her eyes. "Morning, Daniel," she said, her voice calm but full of authority. It was the first time she had ever spoken to him without hesitation or doubt. At 12 o'clock, she attended a networking event, speaking with several local entrepreneurs. Every handshake, every conversation reinforced the wealth of opportunity she had created for herself. People admired her for her transformation, for the values she upheld, and for the health and confidence she now radiated. Each interaction was a testament to the perseverance that had brought her here. By 4:15 in the afternoon, Melissa returned home for a brief rest, reflecting on how far she had come. Her body felt strong, her mind clear, and her heart full. The laughter of Tiffany and the dismissive smirk of Daniel at her party seemed like a distant memory. Melissa's transformation was not just visible, it was undeniable. In the evening, at 7:30, she prepared a healthy dinner, measuring every ingredient with care. She thought about her money, her prosperity, and the richness of the life she was building, not just in pounds lost, but in values, health, and social respect. She knew the final steps of her journey were near, and that soon the world would see the full impact of her resilience. As Melissa wrote in her journal at 11:45, she smiled. 65 pounds lost, health improving, wealth growing, prosperity and values and self-respect rising every day. The woman who mocked me will soon learn the price of their cruelty. She turned off the lights, feeling both exhausted and empowered. Denver had witnessed the emergence of a new Melissa Parker, strong, confident, and unstoppable. The final phase of her transformation and the poetic justice she had imagined were only moments away. It was the 20th of June, 2020, and Denver was basking in the golden glow of early summer. Melissa Parker woke at 6:15 in the morning, feeling a strength she had never known. Her scale read 150 pounds, 90 pounds lost since the night she had been humiliated at her own party. She looked in the mirror and saw a woman transformed, toned, radiant, and exuding an undeniable confidence. Her health was thriving, her values had guided her through the toughest months, and her prosperity, both personal and social, was growing daily. Melissa sipped her morning tea at 7 o'clock, reflecting on her journey. Every drop of sweat, every healthy meal, every decision had brought her here. She smiled, thinking of the irony. The very people who had mocked her, laughed at her weight, and belittled her had no idea that she had built herself into someone they could no longer dismiss. By 10:30, she attended a high-profile networking event downtown, dressed in a stylish outfit that accentuated her transformation. Daniel was there, along with Tiffany, and their jaws dropped the moment they saw her. The laughter and smirks of the past were gone. In their place was admiration, and for the first time, a hint of regret. "Melissa, you look incredible," Daniel stammered, clearly taken aback. Melissa's lips curved into a calm, confident smile. "Thank you, Daniel. I've invested in my health, my values, and my prosperity. It's amazing what determination and self-respect can do." Tiffany tried to hide her surprise, but it was impossible. Melissa could see the tiny cracks in the facade of arrogance that had once shielded their cruelty. It wasn't just her body that had changed. It was her social presence, her wealth of confidence, and the undeniable aura of someone who knew her own worth. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, Melissa was meeting with clients, negotiating deals, and giving presentations. Every word she spoke carried authority. Her journey had taught her that prosperity wasn't only about money. It was about the richness of self-belief, health, values, and the ability to command respect. That evening, At 7:45, Melissa returned home, tired but triumphant. She journaled her reflections. 90 pounds gone, health thriving, wealth and prosperity in every sense. My values guide me, and the woman who mocked me is learning the cost of cruelty. As she lay in bed at 11:55, she felt a quiet satisfaction. The transformation was complete. Melissa Parker had not only reclaimed her health and confidence, but she had also built a life overflowing with wealth, prosperity, and values that no humiliation could ever take away. The time for poetic justice was approaching. The people who had laughed at her would soon understand the full measure of her strength and the power of a woman who refused to be defined by shame. It was the 1st of July 2020 in Denver, and the city was alive with the warmth of midsummer. Melissa Parker woke at 6:30 in the morning, feeling stronger than ever. Her scale read 150 pounds, 90 pounds lighter than the night of her humiliation. But the true transformation wasn't just physical. Her health had never been better. Her confidence was soaring, and her prosperity in all areas, money, values, and social respect, had reached a level she had only dreamed of months ago. At 10 o'clock, she hosted a luncheon at a chic downtown restaurant, inviting business partners, friends, and acquaintances who had supported her journey. Daniel and Tiffany were on the guest list, unaware that the event would change their perception forever. Melissa greeted everyone with grace, radiating self-respect and authority. When Daniel approached, his eyes widened. "Melissa, you look incredible," he said, his voice a mix of awe and guilt. Melissa smiled gently, her posture tall and confident. "Thank you, Daniel. It's amazing what dedication to health, values, and prosperity can do," she replied, her tone calm yet pointed. Throughout the luncheon, it became clear who had the upper hand. Melissa led conversations, inspired clients, and shared her insights on wealth, health, and personal growth. Every interaction reinforced the richness of her transformation, not just in pounds lost, but in self-respect and social influence. By 2:15 in the afternoon, Tiffany could no longer hide her astonishment. I didn't realize," she began, but Melissa interrupted softly. "You didn't need to realize, Tiffany. You only needed to watch. Sometimes the wealth of resilience speaks louder than words." Daniel looked down, shame flickering across his face. He had mocked her once, laughed at her weight, and dismissed her potential. Now, he watched the woman he underestimated command the room effortlessly. The poetic justice was clear. Melissa Parker, once humiliated, had risen so far above that the people who had belittled her could only witness her success in awe. By 6 o'clock in the evening, Melissa returned home, reflecting on her journey. Her journal lay open on the kitchen table. She wrote, 90 pounds lost, health thriving, wealth, prosperity, and values flourishing. Those who mocked me have seen the power of resilience and self-respect. I am the woman I always deserved to be. As the Denver sunset painted the sky in shades of gold and pink, Melissa Parker felt complete. The humiliation that had once defined her was gone, replaced by confidence, wealth, health, and the unshakable values that guided her every choice. She had not just changed her body, she had transformed her life, and those who once laughed now understood the magnitude of her strength. And as she closed her journal at 11:45 in the evening, Melissa whispered to herself, "This is the life I fought for. This is the prosperity I earned." And it's just the beginning. The story of her rise was complete, leaving behind a legacy of courage, transformation, and poetic justice in the heart of Denver.